happening now in Palestine and internationally, but mostly I want to start talking and thinking about how this is all going to play out in Britain and around the world in the kind of medium term and long term, because I think that the current phase of the massacre, the genocides, is coming to a close as Marwan Bashara, the senior political analyst in Al Jazeera, he puts it very well. He says that Netanyahu is essentially playing extra time. That the clocks are running out there. They're mucking about. They can't get any kind of tangible military victory. Gallant, the defence minister, has basically said that the casualty rate is extremely high and they're not sustainable. He's calling now for Haredim in Israel to be drafted, and currently they're exempted. And this is designed to split, essentially lots and lots of clocks are ticking and running out at the top. And it's created this curious situation of a kind of ghoulish stasis, whereby every morning you wake up and you see that there's been another massacre, and they're being completely shameless about it, And the one today, which has already been named the Flower Massacre, when starving Palestinians in the north of the Strip went to try and get flour, and were basically attacked by tanks and guns. And estimates of the dead vary from like 70 to 200. And this sort of thing is happening every day. I mean, the interesting thing is, 2 months ago, when this sort of thing was happening every day, it was only being reported in the Arab. You have to watch Al Jazeera to see this being reported. There was radio silence. There were massacres at schools that had Wikipedia pages with references that this thing happened, and you would not find them mentioned in the Western press. And now that's different. That's different because someone put up this absurd Telegraph push notification about the Flower Massacre today, and it was like, people have been killed after Israeli fire. Accounts differ as to what happened, right? That was literally their headline. Accounts differ, and it's literally the White House line as well, that these things are, one side says this, one side says that, but at least they have to acknowledge that the thing actually happened. And what's happening here really is that public consciousness of what is going on is just ratcheting up everywhere to completely unmanageable levels. Everybody can see what is going on. They can see it's a genocide. They can see war crimes at the very least. And as to the question of whether it's a genocide or not, well, wheels are in motion about that. The ICJ judgment, which is this kind of weird international bureaucratic legal process that doesn't seem to be necessarily connected to anything. But what it does is it essentially gives the green light to every liberal institution in the world to treat this like a genocide, and to say, okay, and every single organisation of any size has a kind of compliance and risk management function. One of the things it will do is examine all its links with Israel. I remember in the 80s, when South Africans, the boycott of South Africa started to kind of bite, and my dad was working for an engineering firm, and like all engineering firms, it had contracts with South Africa, and they signed a contract with South Africa. And my dad and the other Asian engineers just said, well, we're not working on that, and the senior engineers kind of went, oh, well, yes, I understand. It will be very difficult. Yes, I understand completely, and just essentially let them do their own little personal boycott. And this is the kind of thing that's going to happen, really. We're going to see a situation where it is going to be normal to know that what's gone on is a genocide and talk about it and be angry about it. And there's going to be a very, very thin layer of management at the top, desperately trying to put a lid on this. And we're seeing that breaking out now. I mean, I think this is what's happening with this kind of latest attempt to sort of, it's hate speech, we're going to ban it, we're going to criminalise it, which is the latest stuff coming out from Rishi Sunak. And Stop the War and PSC and Friends of Al-Aqsa and all the big organisations that have been running the big demos have put out a very good statement just saying, this is ludicrous, you're just trying to ban people pointing out what's going on. And I do think that they're running on empty with those threats. They're going to try it, they're going to try and come for us, but essentially there's too many people, and it's the centre ground in kind of liberal ruling class thinking on this has shifted to the point that this is now damage limitation. And what was the last major wave of repression we had in this country of protests? I would say it was what happened to the student movement and the riots of 2010, 2011. The riot repression, of course, being presided over by a certain Sir Keir Starmer, and that was just students, and it took a long while to put that down. It took a lot of resources of the state, and Suella Braverman blew herself up by trying to order the Metropolitan Police to ban a march of 300,000, which was never going to happen. So I think they are the radical right is being pushed into this more openly Islamophobic, openly crazy, openly genocidal position, essentially, and they're kind of being dropped like a stone in certain circles. There's a whole section of sort of liberal opinion that is, like Gary Lineker, for goodness sake, that are just rapidly moving away from this. And you're also seeing shifts in the states in a similar way. So I think that what's going to happen is you're seeing a creeping sense of realisation and panic and paralysis in the ruling class over this, because they know that if this is the genocide, and that verdict is very, very likely to come rolling down the hill, then Britain has been complicit in that genocide, because it has been militarily complicit, diplomatically complicit, politically complicit. And what's more, these individual politicians have gone on record giving Israel a blank cheque to do what it likes. The whole, it must defend itself, Israel has that right. And they were all very visibly stalling for time when people were saying, let's have a ceasefire, enough is enough, And they didn't have to do that, right? I mean, Emmanuel Macron, the president of France, now connoisseurs of history may know that France has done a bit of the old imperial massacring in its own right over the years. As imperial Satans go, Macron is not number one, but he's probably number 4 or 5. He looked at what was going on and bailed about a month into this. It's actually what you're doing here is massacring women and kids. We're out, right? So that's the level of the crisis that's facing the ruling class at the moment. You're seeing the Tories going crazy about it. You're seeing Labour going, because they're realising that the hole they've dug into, and obviously we're going to see a gloriously farcical result in Rochdale tonight, where a movie that I've seen twice before, once playing out here in Tower Hamlets and once in Bradford a few years later, is going to play out in Rochdale. And Labour is in a really very, very difficult position over this, and every single institution is. So we're going to see a crisis of liberal institutions, but there's also going to be a class dimension to this, because normal working people are going to know what's going to go on, and we can talk about it. And the people who are going to be trying to shut it down are going to be that thin layer that has got more and more brittle as neoliberalism's kind of progressed around institutions and austerity has progressed around institutions. These people were a small brittle layer of hated people anyway, and now all of a sudden they're the ones trying to shill for a genocide. That's going to illuminate the whole landscape in very, very stark terms, and I think that's something we need to think about going forward. I'll just end on a couple of things. Saturday there is this conference of all the councillors that have stepped down from Labour or resigned from Labour. That's happening in Birkbeck. I think that's going to be a really interesting thing to see what this new formation is of people who took a stand over the genocide, because that's going to be the political front material of the future movement. The other thing is that as the nature of the humanitarian catastrophe becomes clear and people are forced to act, we are going to see the kind of major powers move in and just trying to kind of sort out Gaza or start to rebuild it, start to feed things again. And we're going to get an argument about what to do. And I think that the question of ceasefire is going to fade as the central demand, and we need to start thinking about justice for the Palestinians and justice for the genocidaires who enabled what had happened to them, and also freedom for the Palestinians, because all the kind of solutions that are being proposed at the moment do not involve the Palestinians getting any say over what happens, right? It's all like, we're going to appoint a guy to look after you, right? So that's just a change of jailers as far as they're concerned. That argument is going to blow up, I think, as well in the next 6 months. So that's just a very schematic, big picture, like, overview of what I think is what things are going to look like in the next few weeks.